a way of seeing. Now, we tend to equate faith with believing, almost this kind of blind believing, as if faith were simply the ability to say and believe some sort of creed, like, I believe Jesus was born of Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and rose again. And if you believe what you say, you're done. But what if faith is less about what we assert that we hold and more about what we perceive? What if faith is a way of looking at the world, a way that enables us to glimpse God's activity, to see in the ordinary God in action? Now, some of this faith-based seeing is pretty universal. Nearly everyone will speak of the miracle of birth. But I wonder whether faith gives us the capacity to notice God's presence not just in dramatic moments, but in more subtle ones. The tiny daily seeds of hope that flicker around the edges of things. Take the earliest Christians. They looked at the death of a wandering street preacher, well known locally, but not broadly, hardly historically a giant. And somehow, seeing that, they saw the bloom of resurrection. What enabled them to take a missing body and say, God did this, and this is evidence of new life? What helped them open their eyes so they recognized divinity shining through Jesus' teachings? That they were able to see little local healings as signs and wonders of God's presence? What allowed them to look at the stories of his birth and infancy and perceive the hands of God weaving meaning through human circumstances? That is the work of faith. Scripture is full of this call to see. See, I am about to do a new thing. Go and tell John what you see. Tell him what you see so he may know. Faith is less a system of beliefs than it is a cultivated vision, a way of perceiving God's activity in the world. Because of Jesus, the early believers stopped scanning the horizon for a just, merciful, Israel-friendly king, and instead began looking for God in the common, in the holy hospitality of a stranger, in the small justices we offer one another, in the quieting of judgment so that we can see one another, in the offering of forgiveness, in the drawing realization that generosity, simple daily generosity, is the clearest act of holiness that any of us can participate in on a regular basis. In fact, generosity may be the most accessible form of holiness. And yet we still keep looking upward and outward for some grand sign of divine favor. We wait for the Supreme Court to hand down some evidence of righteousness, or for an election to signal the turning of the tide, or a significant change in the ruling class to stop seeing their own amassing of wealth as important, but rather to serve a common good. I know I've been waiting for it. But Christian faith invites us for a different kind of seeing, a seeing that looks at the small, not the big, a seeing that trusts God to work in the places where the world overlooks. And I see it. I see it right here in our midst. I saw it on Tuesday when I had a brief, joy-filled exchange with an utter stranger in front of the gym. I see it every time Sandy Nichols shows up at somebody's house with a bowl of soup. I see it in Bev Meserve's enormous grin and childlike delight in welcoming all of us to the front door. I see it in all the hands that made the chili chowder lunch come off, and the joy of inviting neighbors into our building. I see it in Bruce Andrews saying yes, frankly, raising his hand and volunteering to help raise money for the community house before we even had a plan. I see it in an envelope that got put in the plate last week that was marked with a pencil, one of our stubby pew pencils, I'm sure. It said Duncan on the outside, and it had 10 single-dollar bills on the inside. I see it when I did a children's message, and the children didn't hesitate to give half of their Hershey's Kisses to God while we grown-ups struggle to give a tithe. I see it at the communion table, where something nourishing happens that is way beyond the calorie count or the rational explanation of God present in our midst. In this time that is thick with fear, Scripture reminds us that faith, this way of seeing, finds God's activities all over the place. Not usually in the sweeping history-making events, but rather in our small daily miracles. Bread, hope, a smile from a neighbor, joy, a helping hand, generosity. So may faith open our eyes. Look gently. Look deeply. Look small. For God is at work everywhere, even now, even here.